I'd like to ask you, Victor Bell, what is the biggest risk?
Well, if I can give an honest answer, it's short is not taking risk at all. Because it's real. I'm a real estate guy, so I take a look at all risk and try to assess it. It was like, hey, how can we minimize risk and get the max return, even if to other people that return is not that very big. So prime example, like when I look at an apartment building deal and I really like it, we start sizing the deal up. First thing we do is we look at the debt, we find a debt person, and then I try to get an insurance person on the team to say, hey, what do you think the insurance needs to be here? Could you give me an idea and a quote and a range? Because I recognize like, hey, there's two things that are going to happen. And the most important thing to me is to make sure that I de-risk my opportunities by saying, hey, this is a nicer thing, but we have insurance. We have somebody that can take a look at this and say, hey, Vic, this is risky, or this is, this is the cost, this is what you're looking at, and here's why. So I think the quality of asset going up, like we said, is the best way to de-risk because it removes some of the question long-term and short-term, and have somebody on your team that is in, like, for guys like yourself. And it isn't an insurance thing. It's just real for me. I want to know, like, I don't gamble. When I go to Vegas, I go for conferences. I don't step one foot and play a slot machine. I don't do any of that stuff. So it isn't that I'm not aware of risk, but if you don't take any risk whatsoever, that's a loss. And then you also need to mitigate that risk by having people on your team who understand risk assessment, guys like yourself. And that's an honest answer. Even when I call the bank, I'm like, hey, what can go wrong here, guys? And then they'll tell me, or someone on my team or a broker. Like I'm all about having people around me that can point out my flaws, because I have them like any other investor. I bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and I want. So I hope that answers the question. It's not, may not be what everyone else looks at, but I'm always asking that same question. Like if I don't take a risk, there's a major risk in itself. But if I do take this risk, what does that mean for me and my investors? And who could I get to point out the things that specialize in that I may not even consider? Even if it's cost, like, hey, Vic, the insurance per door on this thing's gonna range you rough about $800, as opposed to you underwrote it and budgeted around about 450. That matters. And I'm like, oh, why? Well, the panel boxes need to be changed out. This needs to be done. Like all the things that most people just take a look at things and don't think about. But that's how I see risk. Take it, but understand the risk you're taking and why.